Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Great.com talks with Richard Syed, the Director of Clinical Services of the South Island Counselling. If you haven't heard of them yet, they are a team of registered clinical counselors, Canadian certified counselors, interns, and volunteer counselors who offer counseling services to individuals, couples, and families in the Great Victoria area, which is in British Columbia. If you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Now, hi, Richard, and welcome.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to talk to you today and understand more about what's going on in your
Mhm.
region. Usually, Richard, let me give you this already. We start with history.
Okay.
It's always important to know where people come from. And in this case, how did the South Island Counseling begin its activities?
Yeah. So South Island Counseling began under a different name in 1975, a long time ago. And we're actually going to have our 50th anniversary coming up soon. Um, yeah, it started off by a pastor who saw it as part of his mission work to provide a gap that he saw, which is that pastors, priests, different clergy members weren't equipped with the skills to help their congregations. So he wanted to teach them pastoral counseling skills, because in those days the church was much more present in the community, and a lot of people relied on the church. Um, but over time, it expanded to a counseling center just to counsel anybody. And then over time, and always with an affordable mission, that was always making it accessible. Affordable was always part of the values of the organization. And over time, it just grew into just a general affordable counseling center, and that's what we are today. So we changed our name over the years to South Island Counseling. And even though we do have Christian roots, we do not discriminate against anyone. We'll counsel anybody who is wanting counseling. So yeah, that brings us to today.
It's been a really long journey, and
Yeah,
congratulations on that.
yeah.
I think that every organization that passes through this podcast that's over 20 years, I already think this is like huge, huge. Imagine reaching 50, right? This
Yeah.
end. So this is amazing and definitely a proof of the amazing work that you guys have been doing. Um, and I think that through this time, you might have seen some shifts in the challenges that people face. I
Mhm.
know you yourself have
Yeah.
not followed all of this, but I always find interesting to try to understand more what is going on in the
Mhm.
different places that the organizations we talk to are
Mhm.
working on. We have interviewed other organizations in Canada, but I feel the challenges sometimes they vary so much. So this is a question for you. What goes on? What are the most pressing challenges that you see in your community? Why people usually come to you?
Mhm. The big one right now, and I think this is quite widespread, certainly throughout Canada or the Western world, is anxiety. So anxiety is the biggest thing that we see. The most common presenting issue that we see that people note on their forms when they register for counseling. So it can be financial stress, it can be family stress, yeah, worried about world events, climate change. We hear about that a lot. Um, yeah, I think just their exposure to the world and all that's going on is really affecting people's minds and causing a lot of discomfort and people reach out to debrief with somebody or just to go over what's going on in their lives, just to learn some skills of how to cope. And related to that is also depression. So whether it's fully diagnosed clinical depression or just kind of consistent low lying depression, um, we see that a lot as well. And for a lot of the same reasons, financial stress, people's lives aren't going the way they want them to. Um, Family stress, affordability of homes is a really big issue here. So the cost of living is very high. So I think that ties into financial stress, but that's always it seems to be a concern. And we're also located near a university and a college. So we get a lot of 20s 30-year-olds as well. So that's the main demographic that we're seeing right now. So a lot of transition issues as well. And yeah, people feeling isolated is another one. Just again, a lot of university students, family isn't here, supports aren't necessarily here. So yeah, I would say that encapsulates probably maybe 50% of our clientele.
I find it very interesting when you said about um, the cl- the anxiety about climate change, right? I
Mhm.
feel like especially younger generations are feeling this so much. We
Mhm.
have mentioned this in another interview in here, I believe. So it is something to think about. And considering all of those uh, cases, these challenges that you brought to us, what are the services or what is the help that you guys are able to offer?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, probably the most common counseling approach we use is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's just looking at how your thoughts and your behaviors and your emotions all interact and focusing more on things that you can control and how to kind of change the course of your life through your thoughts and actions. So yeah, I would say that's the main skills related to CBT is probably the main way that we help. We use a variety of different approaches, but I think that's a big one, and especially related to climate change because it's such a big, broad thing that's still being understood, and people are feeling the effects of it. They're seeing the effects of it. They feel like they need to be doing more, but there's also that balance between also what you can control and what you can't control, right? So people taking on that responsibility as if it's theirs entirely, and of course it's not. So one person can make a difference, but they can't necessarily take on that entire burden. So finding ways to find balance within that, living in this world that there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of change and there's a lot of problems, but knowing what you can do within your values and also knowing where that ends and where you can't necessarily do much more.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
Richard, if someone, I don't know, maybe listening to us right now that needs help, that is
Mhm.
in your region, how or what would be the best way to get in touch with you and get help, and how this help could be provided? Like, do you
Mhm.
have programs? How does it work?
Yeah. So the best way to reach out, it would be to reach out through our website. So going to southislandcounseling.org, and just at the top of the page there's a link to our intake form, and you just pick whatever category you fall into. So a big thing that we're proud of is our subsidy program. So we have two subsidized rates of $30 per session or $65 per session. Um, and when the going rate for a counselor is up around $150 a session, this is a big discount. So depending on where you fall in terms of your income, you can select either the $30 option, the $65 option, or if you're in a good financial position and you make over a certain amount, you can pick our full rate, which is $130. And that helps basically keep the subsidized program going. So it all balances out. So yeah, so you can go to our website, southislandcounseling.org, fill out the intake form, and you'll be assigned to a counselor as soon as they're available. So we do have quite a wait list right now because offering such affordable counseling, um, we get we get over 1,000 applications a year. So it's quite a bit.
It is.
Yeah.
It is quite a bit, and I can imagine the list now. And one thing that sometimes we cover here is about trying to understand the success, quote unquote,
Mhm.
rate of the organizations. And I think in this case, it's so relative that I
Yeah.
kind of need to ask you, how do you look at things and see, hey, we are making a good impact here, or
Mhm.
we are actually making meaningful change in our
Yeah.
community? How do you measure that?
Yeah. That's a really good question, and not one that I don't think anyone has really come up with a good answer for in terms of mental health because it's so relative, it's so complicated and complex, and it can change from one person to the next. But generally, clients they may come in with a whole host of presenting issues, but we try to focus on the one that is most important to them and center the sessions around those. And we just check in periodically, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much is this anxiety affecting your life? And it may have come, when they came in, it might have been an 8 out of 10, but hopefully by the end it's 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10. So it might still be there, but at least they have the skills to manage it a bit better. So um, we recognize that, yeah, as complex as mental health is, it's rarely linear. It's rarely all or nothing. It's degrees, of course. You can't, anxiety, for example, is not something that you can eradicate. It's something that we need as humans, but it's more about managing it and understanding it differently and understanding how it serves us and understanding how it harms us. So um, basically, we do a lot of verbal scaling questions to try to gauge the client's progress that way. And yeah, hopefully get them to the point where they feel like they can manage whatever the main challenge is that they came in with.
I think that's definitely an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
And I personally really like to hear when you said that anxiety, it's not something that you eradicate, it's something that you manage, right? You learn
Yeah.
to work with and live with. And I'm gonna put myself in this position of never thinking of it in that way, but
Mm,
always looking for ways out. But it's
right.
mostly about managing emotions, right? More
Yeah.
than trying to live without them. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's an interesting way to measure your success.
Well, yeah, I mean, a good example would be even just something like this podcast. If you or I had no anxiety going into it ever, then we might not be as prepared, we might not be as on our toes, and we might not bring out the best in us. But if we were too anxious, you know, we wouldn't want to do it. We would just leave the Zoom room, right? So there's finding that balance and how it can help us and not completely hinder our what we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Richard, thinking about the future now, you talked about this waiting list, and I keep
Mhm.
imagining the need, right? Or where would you like to expand? So looking
Mm.
ahead, what would be like the next steps for you guys, maybe on the next 5 years? What is the plan? What's going on?
Mhm. Yeah, it's it's interesting in this post-COVID world because virtual counseling has become much more accepted. It's still not, I wouldn't say the norm or the main desired mode of counseling, but the benefit of it becoming even, let's say, 25% of our counseling sessions is that we can have more counselors working here and not be limited by the physical space. So in terms of expansion, that is one area we've talked about, potentially expanding our virtual services. So due to regulation, we can only practice in BC, but we've done advertising throughout Vancouver, for example, um, to try to get more virtual clients and be able to hire more counselors, and that's actually been effective because, like I was saying earlier, that the counseling rates are so high that even our full rate of 130 is seeming like a good deal to many people. Um, so my hope is that over the next 5 years, we can actually have more either counselors or more counseling hours that we can offer people, so our current counselors can actually be paid to do more, um, and see more virtual clients. Um, because right now we're, like I was saying, we're kind of limited by the physical space that we have. We have a great space, there's 6 counseling rooms, but sometimes all 6 are booked. Um, so it's quite a challenge to fit everyone in at the desirable times to have counseling.
Oh. And how can our listeners help you achieve
Mm.
this mission? How can we get involved and help you moving forward?
Um, I mean, donations are great. So we are a nonprofit, and donations are still a part of how we try to raise money to keep everything going. But also, what I tell people, if you don't have the financial means, just if you're from the area or from BC, just and you know somebody in your life that might be struggling, just saying, "Hey, I know a counseling center that does good work, and think might be able to help. So reach out. So the more the further our reach, the better. That's us fulfilling our mission. And the more we grow, the more, too, we can get from grants to say, hey, there's a big need out there, and we have a lot of people wanting counseling, and we can justify our our asks a bit better. So just doing that work by just spreading the word, and letting us try to help as many people as possible and grow from there.
I am really looking forward to see you guys getting there, see you guys expanding it. And I feel like you have a beautiful, beautiful path ahead of you. And I do hope you get to celebrate the anniversary
Yes.
properly next year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
do do
50 years.
something really to it's an amazing moment to do that.
Hmm.
So maybe doing this with a bigger structure, working with more people, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us today, Richard. Really like this conversation.
Great. Thank you very much for having us.
It was a pleasure. And for everyone else watching or listening to us right now, thank you so much for joining. And I do hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you did, remember to press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because this shows the algorithm that this is an important conversation and more people can learn about the importance of the South Island Counseling. We're going to leave their website on the description of this episode so you can get more information. You can reach out to them if you need help, or you can, and more especially, you can help them keep going. All right, guys. Bye. And I'll see you in the next episode.